Hello and welcome to another exciting and knowledgeable video of PHP Explained. Today we are discussing the PHP function. Once again we will follow the traditional what, why, how learning cycle and explain the things. PHP function is another super important building block of PHP and any other programming language. Imagine you are adding two numbers with two different values. Again, you are adding two other values. This process can be continued and you have to add 100 different times with 100 different sets of values. Don't you feel bored by doing these stupid jobs? Yes, anyone feels bored by doing these repetitive actions. Instead of this, how beautiful it would be if there was a common tool that could help me to find out the sum of all these sets. The answer is the function. We can do exactly the same task using a function. This tool accepts the values as inputs and returns the results as output. Let's know what is a function. A function is a single line of statements or a group of statements called a block of statements or function body. This function body is performing the repeated actions taken by calculations or other things. A function has a name which is followed by the word function, which is a keyword. The value taken by a function to perform the action such as calculation is called a parameter. Parameters are optional. A function has to be called by its name to perform the action. So, we have covered what is function and why it is used. Once again, a function is a programming building block used to perform repeated tasks. It is a time-saving tool that helps developers stop repeating the same code again and again. Hence, as a developer, our intention is to write a function whenever a group of statements or an action repeats more than one time in our code. The creators of PHP allocate tons of functions in the PHP itself and we can use these functions in our coding anywhere as required. These functions are available as ready-to-use, hence called inbuilt PHP functions. Again, these functions are grouped under different heads. A few common and useful of these are array functions, string functions, date functions, file-related functions, database functions, session functions, cookie functions, and many more. PHP official documentation has a list of full inbuilt functions. The link is provided in the description. The PHP developers are free to create their own functions. When we find repeated actions in our code, we can create a function and use it many times. We have to follow the same guidelines to create a function. Now, let's inspect how to write a function in PHP. Have a look at the syntax of the PHP function. Here are a few points to remember when creating a user-defined function. 1. A function must start with the word function, which is a keyword. Keywords are words for PHP and have special meanings to the interpreter. When the interpreter is getting this word in the code, he will be sure that he is going to deal with a user-defined function. 2. A function name must start with a letter or an underscore. 3. Function names are not case-sensitive. 4. Function body must start with opening curly brace and end with closing curly brace. The code or block of statements must appear in between the curly braces. 5. A function has to call to make it work by its name followed by opening and closing parentheses. Let's see an example. In this example, we have created a function message greeting with a single line statement. We are printing a common greeting, hello. How are you? In the previous example, we have created a function with a common greeting. It would be great if we could add the name of the person to greet. Yes, it is possible by passing the parameter to the function. We are modifying the same example with parameters. In this example, we are passing the name of a person when the function is called. The original function accepts the value in a variable and adds it to the statement. Here are a few things to know about parameters. 1. The parameters are also called arguments. 2. Parameters or arguments are optional building blocks of a function. 3. Parameters are nothing but variables. 4. These parameters are passed in the parentheses of a function. 5. The same parameters will be passed in the calling function. 6. The parameters must match in orders and types in both original and calling functions. It means if we pass 3 parameters with type number, string, and boolean respectively, we have to maintain the same order in both original and calling functions. 7. There is no limitation of parameters in a function. Let's modify our example with 2 parameters. In this example, we have passed 2 parameters. These are the greeting text and the name of the person. See, in the original function we are accepting these values in the same order. We have updated the message by adding these 2 values to it and printing it. Now, what will happen if we do not want to add greeting text in the message and keep it default as hello? The answer is we can use the default value for the parameter. Let's modify our example and see how it works. In this example, we have called the function messageGreeting 2 times. In the original function, we have added a default value of the variable $name and it is there. In the first call, we have passed the name John as the parameter of the variable name. The message will be displayed with the name John. In the second call, we do not pass any parameter in the calling function. When the original function does not find any name or gets an empty list of parameters, then it uses the default value, there, for the variable $name and prints the message. Let's see another function where there are 2 parameters. Here, we have called the function 3 times. In the first call, we have passed the parameter values and it prints the message with the passed values. In the second call, we have passed with a single parameter. In the original function, the only parameter will be received in the first parameter called $greeting, and the value, David, is stored here. In the second parameter, the default value, John, is used, and the message prints, David John. How are you? In the third call, we passed an empty string as the first parameter and David as the second parameter. These values are received in the successive parameters of the original function and the message prints, David. How are you? From these second and third calls, we have to understand that we need to call function carefully. Let's see another example. In this example, we are adding 2 values. In the first call, we are passing 2 values and the function prints the sum of them. In the second call, we are passing the same values. But this time we are putting the second value in double quotes. There is no difference in the result. We will get the correct result. The PHP interpreter can convert this string to a number and add it to the other. It is as simple as we can see it. In the third call, we are updating the second parameter as 5 days. In this case, the value becomes a string. Now, it is impossible to add a string with a number, and hence a warning is generated. In the previous examples, the message and results are printed in the function itself. PHP function can return a value also. In this case, the value of the sum of 2 numbers has been returned by the original function to the calling function. The calling function prints the result. We can declare the return type of the function also. Return type means the value which is returned by the original function. The type of that value can be fixed. Let's explain with an example. Can you guess the value to be printed? Surely, you can do it. The result is 12.7. Let's add the return type of the function. The return type can be declared by adding a colon and mentioning the type names such as int for integer, float for decimal, bool for boolean, and string for strings after the function name and before the opening curly brace. It is possible to add space between the colon and the type name. Check the updated version of the previous example. Here we have added the return type float, which is the default return value in this example. Let's update it and check again. Now, we have updated the return type as int or integer. Can you guess the result? Hopefully, you can guess correctly. Yes, it is 12. As we have mentioned, the return type of the function is integer. It returns the whole number only and discards the decimal part. Now, if we want to be strict with the return value, then what will happen? What we mean is we do not want to allow the function to update the float value to an integer value when the function type is strictly mentioned as an integer. If we want to create this scenario, then we have to strictly tell the PHP interpreter or parser to do so. For that, we can add a strict type declaration at the top of the PHP page. Let's see it in action. In this case, we will receive a fatal error. Generally, we are passing values as parameters to the function. In this case, the parameters that are passed in the original function and the calling function are treated as different. It means these two different sets of variables have occupied different spaces in the computer memory. Hence, if we change a variable in the function block, it will not affect the variable in the calling function. Let's give an example. In this example, the parameter in the calling function is $no, and the same is accepted in the original function as variable $a. Now, we are adding value 5 to it. Hence the value of $a becomes 7. But the original value of the variable $no remains the same, or 2. Prints variable $no will return a value of 2. However, the situation may arise where we want to update the value of parameters in both original and calling functions. It is possible by using passing arguments by reference. Let's update the above example. In this case, PHP prints 7 as the result. Can you mark the difference between the previous example and this example? Guess, you have identified it correctly. In the function parameter, we have added an ampersand sign, which is available with the key 7 on your keyboard, just before the parameter $a without any space. How has this happened? When we have added an ampersand with the variable, it refers to the same memory location of variable $no, which is outside the function block. Hence there is no separate memory location for variable $a. Now, when adding a value 5 to $a, it actually adds the value in the same memory location which is held by variable $no. Hence the value of $no is increasing by 5 and it becomes 7. Hence we will get value 7 when print $no. The scope of function is another important aspect of functions in PHP. Let's write an example and then explain. Generally, we cannot use variables and resources in the function which are outside the function. In this example, we are using variable $x inside the function, though it is declared outside the function. This is possible because we are using the statement global $x before using the variable $x in the function. Declaring global means we are allowing this variable to be used in the function. When a PHP variable is followed by opening and closing parentheses, then it is trying to search for a function with the same name and execute it. Let's see an example. We have a function color. We have a variable $func which holds the value color. We are echoing the variable $func and adding parentheses to it. If we interpret the variable $func, then we will see the value color in it. The color has got parentheses and it becomes a function color. Hence PHP parser searches for a function called color. Luckily, PHP parser finds a function named color. It executes that function and prints the message with a default color value. The text result is, "We like the beautiful blue color." We can pass a parameter with a new color, green, and the new output is, "We like the beautiful green color." The function that does not have a name is called an anonymous function. This is also called closures. Here is an example. In this example, the function we are using does not have a name. It starts with function and accepts the parameters as usual. It returns the value after adding the two values. It returns the value to a variable $sum. This variable $sum is called instead of a function name and passes the values as parameters. The arrow function is an enhanced version of the anonymous function. Here is an example. In this case, the function does not start with the word function but fn. The parameters are passed as it is. Then we put an arrow to write the function body. The final result will be held by a variable $sum. Congratulations! You have successfully completed the PHP function. Please go through the tutorial again and again and try to understand the concepts and implement them on your computer. Thank you for being with us. If this video is really helpful to you, then please like it and share it with your friends. Let us know if you have any questions. We will be happy to reply to you. We will be back soon with another video.